Well, welcome to this next video on the nowRail model railway control system. And today we're going to be looking at how to send commands from nowRail to the NCE Cab Bus. Now, what that then allows you to do is use the nowRail controllers or build your own controller, build your own control panels in the nowRail system, and they will then be able to send those commands through to the NCE Cab Bus. And that will then control both your locos and your accessories. So going over to a very cramped workbench, we have my good old NCE Power Cab, and then I've got a nowRail controller. Now at the moment, if I move the controller, sorry about the dodgy loco, the loco is in for repair, so it's a bit jumpy, but as you can see, by using the NCE controller, I can move the loco backwards and forwards. So now what I'm going to do is just select a different loco address, just to make sure that it's not trying to power what I've got. Then I'm going to go over to my nowRail controller. I'm going to change loco and now pick up the same loco. And of course now the loco moves with the nowRail controller. He says, that's a very grindy loco, hence the reason it needs a repair job. Now, the thing to understand about what you've just seen is this power cab is obviously connected to the NCE Cab Bus. It is the NCE Cab Bus, realistically, but this unit is also now connected to the cab bus, but not directly, as you'll see, because this unit is completely wire free. There's no connections at all on this unit. So this is one of the advantages of the nowRail system. You can build wired or wire free controllers, but still send the commands to your NCE Cab Bus system. So let's have a look at how that's done. So after a quick revamp of the workbench, I have got rid of the loco and the track because we don't need it anymore. What we have is the nowRail controller. This sends its commands in a broadcast mode, as I've showed in the previous videos. We then have our NCE Power Cab that is connected through the normal NCE front plate. Down here I have another ESP32 module that is connected via this, was it a MAX 485 unit, and that sends its commands into the cab bus system. So when I send a command from the controller, or if I send it from an accessory controller, all those commands are transmitted out over nowRail, and if this board is configured correctly, it will then pass those commands straight onto the NCE Cab Bus, and it will power the the loco or the accessory in the same way that it would be powered if the command came directly from the power cab. So let's have a quick look at how this is all set up. So below the video there is the link to the nowRail page, and if you click on that link, you're going to finish up on the nowRail resource page. Now, to work out how to control the system for the cab bus, just scroll down to the NCE Cab Bus connection. Click on that and you will get the video, some information, and more importantly, the wiring diagram to get you started. Now, going back to the workbench, one of the great things about the cab bus system is it uses just standard RS-485 protocol. So it's quite simple to add a unit that can use that protocol into the system. So as you can see, I've got an ESP32 dev module. I then have the 3.3 volts going to VCC, ground obviously going to ground. There is one white connection here. Notice it goes to the DE and the RE. That goes to pin D4 in this example. And then we have RX2 going to RO and TX2 going to DI or D1, whatever that is supposed to say. So once this is wired up, then all we need to do is configure the dev module to become our receiver unit. Now, for those of you that are new to this sort of thing, an ESP32 dev module is going to cost you about £3 to £4, depending where you buy it. I get mine off AliExpress, so sometimes they're right down to sort of £2.50, sometimes even less. An RS485 module is going to cost you maybe £2 or £3, again, depending where you buy it. If you're getting that off AliExpress, they'll probably send you 5 for £5, something like that. But for the NCE system, you only require one RS485 module for the whole system. So even if I had 4 or 5 controllers and 4 or 5 separate control panels, it would still only use one connection to the NCE Cab Bus, which is quite useful because if you're using things like the power cab, you're really restricted to the number of items that you can plug in on the cab bus. So no matter how many controllers you have, the dev module only requires one connection to cab bus. So the next thing we need to do is, if you like, program up that ESP32, and for that you just go and download the latest version of nowRail. At the moment I've got it at 1.4.4, but obviously there are regular updates. If you're just getting started, then it is worth clicking on the link. He says looking for it, going back up to the top, there is a link to the video on how to get started with the nowRail system and how it all works. However, once you've done that, you just load up the code into your Arduino IDE, and I'm going to follow on from the getting started where I had set up my code for my layout. So this is the code that I have given for my workbench test unit. That is the layout code. That's all that needs to be done on the first screen. Then you just go over to the nowRail user setup H. So let's start to look at the configuration to create a NCE Cab Bus connection. Now I'm going to leave these values the same because that is my standard desktop setup. Those are the default settings anyway when the system arrives. I am going to turn the master clock on. Now the master clock, by running this, it will actually sync the time on nowRail with the clock on the NCE Cab Bus. Going back to the workbench, you'll notice that the NCE Power Cab has got a time of 10:20. When we come over to the nowRail controller, you can see that it's 10:20 and 11:12 seconds. nowRail has a second timer. The NCE system does not. Now, the only issue with that is that when you first turn on the nowRail system, it can take up to 2 minutes to sync the time. And also, if you change the clock speed, it can take a few seconds before the nowRail system catches up. That's because it actually has to try and guess how the time is working on the cab bus system. It's just something, the way that cab bus puts out that information, it doesn't send the current clock speed, or at least not that I've found so far. So setting the unit as a master clock, this is the connection from your ESP32 to your NCE Cab Bus system. That means that any clock time from Cab Bus will now be duplicated throughout your nowRail system. Now that means if you want to do clocks on your layout or various other things like timetables, all of those items will sync with the time that Cab Bus is sending out. Now the next bits to set up on the system, you just come down to the Cab Bus section, uncomment these 3 lines of code, and that is all you need to do. That's all the programming done. Now what this has done, I have set a Cab Bus address of 4. Now that is the address for the ESP32. Going back to the webcam, that means that the connection coming from here to here, this unit, as far as Cab Bus is concerned, is a 5-byte controller. That's one of the newer NCE controllers. Now, at this point, I must give great thanks to NCE for the help they gave me in this. They sent me some very good data to help me produce this system. So once again, thanks to the NCE guys for all of your help. So from a Cab Bus point of view, we are using an address for the unit of 4. Now, this is important, especially if you are using the Power Cab. The Power Cab has restrictions on the addresses that you can use. So I would tend to advise you to use the address of 4 if you can. On the bigger NCE systems, there aren't the same restrictions, so you can have some other numbers, but I would tend to leave it as 4 if at all possible. Now, the next line, Cab Bus short address on, value of 1, or it can be set to 0. Now, this is a bit of a weird one that is something I had to do to get around some oddities on the Cab Bus system. So if you've got a loco with an address that is greater than 128, it's going to be a long address. However, you can have a long address that's lower than 128, and you can have a short address that's lower than 128. Now, short addresses are often used for consists and things like that. So if you set this value to 0, all addresses that are sent through will be treated as a long address. If you set this to 1, loco addresses 1 to 128 will be treated as short addresses. Addresses over 128 will be treated as long addresses. Now, the final line here is the RS485 enable pin, and that is all to do with the wiring diagram. The default value is 4, and if we go back to the wiring diagram, you will see that in the wiring diagram I used pin 4. Now, you can use other pins, but to be honest, I would stick to pin 4 and just set it up exactly as it is in the diagram. Now, the one cable that I haven't talked about is the connection from the RS485 module to the NCE Cab Bus. So if we go back to the webcam, you can see that I've got a lead here. You've got the green and the red wires, and when you unplug these, I think this was some telephone connector that I got, and there is a, looking in there, it looks like there's a black, red, green, and is that an orange at the one end? All you need to do is you only require the center 2 wires, which in my case are the red and the green. Just all I did was clip off the other 2 here and just connect the center 2 into this unit. Now, once all the code has been sorted out, it's just a case of uploading that then to the board. Takes a little bit of time. If you are new to the ESP32, it does take a little bit of time just to upload that sketch. Sometimes it can take sort of up to a minute if it's the first time. This one looks like it's going to compile a little bit quicker. Here we go. So it's now uploading to the board. Right, it's all there, and now you can see that the system is running. Now you'll see down here, as the unit has just started, that the clock is got a value of 0. Now that's because at the moment the NCE Cab Bus hasn't sent a time broadcast. Now it's sent a time broadcast, and immediately the unit is in sync. So at this point, this unit here is now in sync with the Cab Bus, but because this is the master clock, any other ESP32s on the layout will receive the master clock broadcast, and therefore immediately any other boards connected will immediately be synced with the master clock. So just to show you what I mean, I've now connected this ESP32 down here. And when we look at the desktop on the left hand side, I've got that ESP32 that is the master clock. We can see it sending out its time updates, and we can see that the time is syncing between the two. Let's just get the scroll level at the right thing so we can see it on the screen. There we go. We've got the times now syncing between the two. And at the same time, if we look at the hand controller, we can see that the time up here is exactly the same. So that master clock is now sending out the signal to all the nowRail system. And it's a very useful thing to do, setting that master clock up, because it shows that you have now connected correctly to the NCE Cab Bus and are reading the time sync from the Cab Bus. Because if you can read the time sync, you can then send signals to Cab Bus. Now, to save space on the workbench so I don't have to have real accessory decoders and trains running, I have added this Arduino Uno here, and this has a little circuit on here that allows it to decode DCC signals. So now I have my DCC track output coming out and coming into this unit here, and that's going to allow us to analyze any packets of data that would be sent to the track. Now, thankfully, that output is easy to understand. So if I start to increase the speed, I'm on loco 886. We can see there that we get the different speed commands going through. If I turn the headlights on and off, we will see the command going through for the headlights. And the same if I choose any other function, we'll see that packet data going through. Now, if I select an accessory, just do accessory 78, I think that was, press the button, and we can see there that accessory 78 was sent to a position of 1. So what I've now done is set the speed of loco 886 to 0 so that we get idle coming up. Now I'm going to move the controller for the other loco, which is loco 102. And as soon as I do that, we can see that we are receiving the packets of data. Now I can then use my power cab at exactly the same time. So both controllers can be used simultaneously. It's not a choice of a nowRail controller or a power cab. It's a case of you can use both together. And the same with the accessories. Now, in a previous video, I showed how this was an accessory decoder. And if I now press this button here, you can see that I get accessory 102. Let's just stop the scroll. That has sent an accessory command to accessory 102. Let's start the scroll again, and I'm going to press one of the other ones. And there we go. We have an accessory command now. There we have accessory 101. I held it down, so it turned it on in the one direction. Then it has turned it off. So with that very simple demonstration, you can now see that you can send any command you want for an accessory, for a loco, whether it be speed or function, can all be sent through to the NCE Cab Bus, where it will be processed just as if it was coming from a genuine NCE controller. Now, the advantage of that, of course, is that these controllers can be built for about £25. So you can sort of 3D print the case, all the data is available, the files are all free to download. You can just build this, program it up, and you can have as many of these as you want on your NCE system. However, there are certain limits to the power cab, not the bigger systems, but obviously the power cab, you're limited to 1.5 amps unless you put a booster on it. I recently built myself a nice little 5 amp booster, cost me about £6. So it's very easy to add a booster to the power cab if you want to do it, but you are still limited to a certain number of locos from what I can remember. However, the other advantage is you can now build yourself control panels that use buttons or a stud and probe system. I'll be honest, I used to use my power cab for my exhibition layout, but I must admit, when it came to accessories for turnouts and stuff like that, having to press around with the various buttons, you know, it felt like I was endlessly playing with a pocket calculator. So that's why the nowRail controller, you just select the loco by name, and I prefer either the push buttons that we have here, or for those who've seen some of my other videos, these are my touchscreen controllers. This is what's called a GT911 capacitive touchscreen. That's the sort of screen that is in the front of a car sat-nav. And that clear piece of glass, then I put it over some perspex with some NeoPixels underneath. And that just means that when I want to set a direction for the track, I literally put my finger over the NeoPixel and that will send the command over nowRail to control my turnouts. And obviously, if this was connected to the NCE Cab Bus, it's going to send that command out to the cab bus. Now, while we're talking about sending out commands, just a couple of things to be aware of. In nowRail, you can just use any integer for your address for your accessories. Now, that means you can have accessories into the sort of 9,000 range and higher. If you're sending commands to the NCE Cab Bus, you need to make sure that the accessory decoder addresses are below a value of 2000, and you also need to make sure that any loco decoder addresses are within the range that your NCE system can use. So you just need to check before you go and put in an address that is impossible for the unit to use. So just like the previous video for DCC-EX, you can see that nowRail works very, very well with the NCE system. And it's a nice way to be able to build cheaper control panels and even cheaper controllers to work with your current NCE system. The other thing, of course, is that you can do a hybrid version where you are sending out commands to accessory decoders and loco decoders, but you can also then add separate nowRail modules onto your layout if you wanted to. Again, the choice is yours. The nowRail system is there to complement your system, not to dictate how you operate it. So I'm going to end the video there for today. It's just been one on how to connect to the NCE Cab Bus, and hopefully that showed you the way that that is done, just how easy it is, and offers up some options of what you can then add to your layout through the nowRail system. Now, in this video, I've connected to Cab Bus. In the last one, I connected to DCC-EX. In the next video, I'm going to look at how you can then send accessory commands from any DCC system back into the nowRail system. So that will be in the next video coming up very soon. Thanks for watching. Any questions, either email me off the Digital Town site or put them below the video on YouTube, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.